egos, and we're still kind of waiting for her to get on the line. Um, there she-
Hello, this is Stevie.
Morning, how are you today?
Good. How are you guys?
Oh, real good. Had just had a little technical difficulty, so what's going on
That's
with
all
you?
right.
So tell us how you are today, Stevie.
I'm really good. I'm really blessed. I know we were going to talk a little bit about one of the chapters that I'm getting a lot of feedback on.
Yeah,
It's titled "Quick to Blame, Not to Claim." So similar to fart, it's oftentimes easier for us to point out other people's egos before it is likely that we'll actually own our own essence, if you will.
mm-hmm.
I've gotten a lot of feedback about this chapter, and I think it's because, the book kind of asks you to look internally at what it is that your ego's saying and when, and, whether or not it's accurate, if it's just making stuff up. But sometimes, even though it's a little counterintuitive and counterproductive, sometimes it's easier for us to identify the ego in other people so that we can then acknowledge that it's the ego in us that's pointing it out in another being. So the idea here is ultimately, um, we can probably someone right now in our lives that no matter what they say or how they react to anything, whether it's every discussion, their body gestures, their facial expressions, or even every single social media status update, it's like fueled with ego, right?
Right.
Well, it's the ego in us that identifies with the ego in them. We wouldn't even be able to acknowledge they're on this egotistical rant if we ourselves didn't
Didn't,
embody those traits, those qualities. So, at first, from a non-judgmental, loving place, if we can just observe the egos around us and then slowly kind of come back a bit and hear the mind chatter inside of ourselves that's judging the others. Say we're at, a checkout line at the grocery store, and there's someone between us and the cashier, and the cashier tends to be maybe new at the job or slow at their process of cashing things out, checking things out, what have you. And if we notice perhaps the person in front of us is getting really irate, they're kind of like sighing heavily, they're crossing their arms, they're rolling their eyes, they're mumbling, "I can't believe this," da da da. Well, we're observing the ego in them, but not from a judgmental place. We want to just kind of be like a child, be very curious and in a sense of wonderment, and just kind of observe the human experience, because how funny is it? It's
right.
real comical. So we see this person in front of us expelling their ego and ranting and raving, and then the ego in us might want to say and identify with the fact that we're superior to them and think, "Oh my gosh, look at this person in front of me making a fool of themselves.
Right.
I'm going to stay here and I'm going to be composed because I'm better than." So, our own egos start to identify and label other egos. And it's in that awareness, no matter whether it's another person's ego or we are able to identify our own, it's in that awareness of our own that we are conscious beings. We're separate. We're on the outside looking in at the human experience. We're hearing the ego, so that means we're not of it. We're not caught in this word whirlwind of mind chatter that the ego is delivering to us. So we're on the outside looking in, and that's consciousness. That's conscious living.
That's
Just simply being aware.
that's beautiful. Now, what is that important? What does that give us to be aware of uh, our ego and perhaps even the egos of others, or to be kind of looking
Well,
and curious?
if nothing else, it definitely gives us the ability to laugh. I
Right.
mean, it's incredibly humorous. The human experience. It should be called the humor experience. I mean, it's so funny, but also just like when we release gas, we create inner peace. So when we have all this constant mind chatter happening internally, we tend to feel just this internal struggle. There's all this chaos that's happening in our heads, and we're constantly judging others, we're judging ourselves, there's all this negative self-talk, there's holier than thou. It's just this constant internal struggle, this battle. And if we can just let it go, let it rip, right? Just let it go. Just observe it as what it is. Acknowledge that it's part of the human experience, no different than farts. You just let them go, right? You don't let them fester inside. You let them go. You realize, okay, it's time for me to just release this. And then you release it. It doesn't have its power over you anymore. And then you have inner peace. So physically and now emotionally.
Yeah.
So that's another, comparison, is just by simply letting both go, acknowledging that they're both part of the human experience, and not giving egos any more credibility than you would gas. It's just a part of the human experience. That's it. Just hear it out, let it go. Like, it's no big deal. It's comical, actually. It's comical.
Right. What I love about what you're saying is I feel like what I'm hearing is that it gives you a choice between being, like kind of frustrated or angry or kind of judgmental, which doesn't feel good. It's like a choice between feeling good and feeling bad. Like, which one do you want to choose? Is it going now? Who do you think that could benefit from this kind of information?
I think all of us, anyone that has an ego, which I imagine is pretty much everyone.
Everyone.
Honestly, I think I just know that it's done wonders for me, because when I'm able, and anyone that can identify with this, will then give it a shot. I know that I've struggled with that internal dialogue all my life, because it's part of life. It's part of the human experience. I've had those moments where I thought I was better than someone, and then many moments where I thought I wasn't good enough.
Right.
And that was all chatter that was just incessant mind chatter, just nonstop, well, you're better than that person, but you could be thinner, and you could be prettier, and you could be funnier, and you da-da-da-da-da, but, at least you're not like them, and at least you don't have an attitude like them, and at least, it's just this constant pendulum back and forth between self-loathing and self-righteous. And that's exhausting. In that, I was always trying to be something. I was trying to be that man, or be, I guess, humble to. I was always trying to find my place. And the truth is, we just need to simply be. We don't need to be anything. We just need to be. And that means in this place of wonderment and curiosity, and just going with the flow of things, and not challenging and questioning every single thing. So anyone at any time is experiencing a bunch of internal dialogue, or even external, they're back and forth between, well, I think I'm better than this person, and I'm not as good as that person, so I continue to strive to be da-da-da-da-da. In those moments when we get really overwhelmed, I think it's time for us to just kind of acknowledge what's being said, how the mind chatter serves us, and based on that, we decide how to move forward. A lot of I think the ego is neither good nor bad. I just think that everything's energy, and it has this vibrational frequency. It's either high vibrating, and it's in the positives, and we're moving and shaking, and we're creating great things in this human experience, or it's a lower vibration, and we kind of stay in those places of a funk, kind of not moving, not a lot of momentum. We're just kind of stuck there.
Right.
And to bounce between the two, well, that's difficult, because a purposeful path you would think would be a consistent one. You're constantly feeling a sense of self and self-worth, and you know where you're at in life. So honestly, anytime anyone is struggling between self-loathing and self-righteousness, and they're just trying to find out who they are, absent of being anything in particular, absent of ego, it's just as simple as acknowledging what the mind chatter is saying, and then integrating whatever is going to benefit you, what's going to favor you as your greatest good. Just integrating that into your life at that moment. And it's a present moment thing. It's a practice. You know, you never perfect it, or
Right.
perhaps some people do. I don't know. I practice it as often as I can remember. And I find a lot of peace. I find a lot of inner peace because I can literally separate from, I'll find distance from, rather, the ego. And I just realize, okay, this is, you know, it's no different than gas. It
Right.
is literally a part of the human experience. And once we know that, it's like, oh, well, this is comical. This is funny.
Yeah.
Like, this is, listen to this guy. I can't believe the stuff he's saying right now. You know, I think last time we were on the show, driving in that morning, there was a gentleman behind me who was tailgating me. And, you know, my ego had plenty to say that this guy should have got on the road sooner, that I'm going to slam on my brakes and brake check this guy. And, you know, like there was so, and then I could hear, I literally took a moment to step outside and acknowledge the past few thoughts that I had, the mind chatter that was coming in.
Uh-huh.
And I realized, I'm a jerk.
Yeah.
No, I realized my ego, I was letting it take over. It was taking the wheel.
Right.
You know? And
And how
that
did you
moment,
feel
I
in
thought,
that moment? I mean, how did you feel in the moments that you're letting your ego kind of run?
I felt out of control.
Yeah.
I felt anxious. I felt frustrated. I felt like a victim.
Right.
And then the moment that I acknowledged what my ego was saying, the thoughts that were coming to mind, because that's what happens, they come to mind. They are not who we are. Thoughts are not who we are. They come to mind. That's why we say that phrase. So when I recognized those thoughts that were coming in, and I just simply dismissed them, I laughed at them and dismissed them, I had this wonderful, possibly intuition that this guy miscalculated how fast his coffee was going to run through his system. And I remembered the many times before that I've had beverages that were, you know, on their way outbound, and I had to hurry up and get to a bathroom. And I didn't care if I was tailgating or passing people, I had to get to a restroom.
Right.
So it was great to kind of have this compassion on such a comedic level to just go, man, I'm being a real jerk to this guy, you know, and we're all one. Let me just give him a shot at whatever, you know, for whatever reason he needs to get by me, I'm going to let him pass. So I scoot over, he passed, and I imagine he passed gas minutes later because he got to his final destination safely. But, you know, we just have to let go,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm glad that I was able to do that because I felt like, okay, you know, that's my act of kindness today.
Right.
That's me being a little bit more compassionate, you know, and I don't know, it's just very freeing.
And so how did you feel in that transition after you kind of let that go and showed compassion towards that?
I felt complete. I felt precious and priceless. You know, I acknowledged that person, seeing that person, even if I didn't see them, but kind of seeing like Avatar style, right? Like acknowledging that they are having their own human experience and that they needed to get where they needed to go, and it wasn't my business. I didn't need to, you know, attach myself to the outcome. Seeing them as a human being, having a struggle, whatever that struggle might be, and letting them pass. I kind of gave myself, you know, everything we do to each other, we do to ourselves too.
Right.
Because we're all a reflection of one another. So I kind of gave myself a pass in life. I let myself get a get out of jail free card. Like, you know what, sometimes I got to take care of stuff, and other people many times over have helped me when I was, you know, maybe inconsiderate or I was impatient. You know, I've my goodness, I can think of many times that people have lent me that, you know, and even in the military, man, I could have gotten in trouble a lot of times, you know, courts martial and all, and by the grace of just solid, good people, good human beings that were in a place of compassion, they spared me, man. I mean, they spared me. I'd like to think my work ethic had a little bit to do with it, but you know what? They could have been so egotistically driven that they could have seen past any accolades. They could have gone past any word of mouth praise. And, you know, I could have been hammered, man. I could have been in total trouble, but I recognized where grace has been offered to me
Yeah.
in the moment that I lent it to someone else. And I think, too, that's why people say that when you do volunteer work, you actually benefit oftentimes more than the recipient.
Right.
Because what you're doing for others, you're doing for yourself. So even if we are acknowledging the ego in others, so long as it's in a place of love and absence of judgment, we're just observing, we're lending that credibility to ourselves, too. We're lending ourselves the opportunity to distance ourselves from our own egos, and we're giving ourselves that pass, to just be. Absent of judgment, void of discrimination. We're just being.
What would you say to someone who maybe has not experienced a lot of grace in their life and kind of has gone through hard knocks and is having a hard time understanding the concept of letting go or letting forgiveness or whatever?
It's a really good question, and I know that everyone's journey is unique, but I can offer that, I have this challenge right now in one of my courses. It's a mastery skills course for healthcare practitioners. And how good is any one of us, especially as a practitioner, how good is any one of us to our clients if we ourselves aren't taking our own medicine?
Right.
In my case, laughter is the best medicine, so I say get your ass to a comedy club. But in addition to that, find time, even if it's just 15, 20 minutes, to just hang out with yourself, man. I mean, we are all such precious, perfect, priceless beings. And if we haven't received grace from other people, at least we've got ourselves. So we need to lend that to ourselves. I would say go do something for yourself. Date yourself. Go on a date with yourself. Invite yourself to enjoy your own company, because that's where you can find probably the ability to distance yourself from ego. You might hear some mind chatter, every now and again, like, oh, here you are, you're eating a burger by yourself. But I love meals by myself now. I love it.
Right.
I feel like I'm nurturing my vessel. I'm taking care of me. I'm spending time with myself. Just enjoy time with yourself and lend that grace to yourself, I would say. Whatever it is. If you've got a bucket list item that's somewhat for reasons that you can describe as because it gives you joy, feed on that. Go do that. Go date yourself. Go take that bucket list and extend that grace to yourself. Enjoy your own beingness. Enjoy your human experience. Do things that make you feel joyful and wondrous and childlike and curious, those things, because that's grace. That's grace too.
Right.
Just being in a place of wonderment, and you'll start to acknowledge a lot of things. If nothing else, how precious and priceless you are.
Right.
So I'd say spending time with yourself. Yeah, dating yourself,
loving yourself,
bucket list items.
And becoming aware too, just as you were saying earlier, becoming really aware of the things that make you feel good and the things that make you don't feel good. And when you realize that you're in that place of not feeling good, let it go. It's a fart. It's gas. It's funny. Go. Find another thought. Find another thing to focus on. Find another, issue
or find the humor
right.
in the screwed up chatter. Like just even finding the humor in it is like, you know what? Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
God, universe, source, whatever. If anything created us, it's funny.
Yeah.
Like obviously there's a sense of humor for us to have these silly thoughts,
Yeah.
But the ego is the one thing I believe that separates us from each other.
Yeah.
Puts distance. We're constantly judging and labeling as being separate from us, but we're all one. Capital O.
Yeah.
We're all one.
That's beautiful. And so, what's your vision for the world, and what's your big picture goal here, and in talking about this and thinking about what's going to happen, if we can all kind of be a little bit more compassionate towards each other, a little bit more aware.
I mean, there's a lot of people that are on board, and there is a transformational shift happening. It's, it's widely talked about. It's documented scientifically with energetic vibrational frequencies. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff out there. We just have to be children of wonderment and curiosity and go seek it. And with that, like if anyone's even listening and they're thinking, okay, this chick's out of her mind, well, a year ago I would have been shaking my head in agreement with you. The thing is, the ultimate goal, I guess, for the world is just to be. That's it. And the vision is every single moment that we can remember. If we can just be, that's it. We don't have to be anything. We just have to be. It's the human experience, the human test, not the human, you know, I don't know, what are those things called? The gauntlet? It's not like a human gauntlet. It's the human experience. Or to experience it. And there's certain things that intrinsically help some of us feel, well, just feel, let alone feeling better and empowered. And that's when we be, when we are true to our inner true selves. And there's some stuff that just makes us happier, like when we're being compassionate to one another, when we're lending each other help, when we're just being with one another.
Yeah.
So honestly, the big goal, the big hope, the big mission is every fleeting moment that we have to recognize that it's another moment that we can just observe the human experience, be aware of it, be grateful for it, acknowledge that, you know, everything is energy, and that what we can manifest on different levels vibrationally what we want in our lives. You know, we can operate at a place of compassion, and then compassion find us. People that we don't want in our lives because they don't serve our greatest good at this time, they will part. They'll be distant from us. It's not even something that takes effort. It is as simple as being. That's the goal. That's the mission. And then those that are going to be with us, they will be with us.
Now, let's talk a little bit more about just being and what that actually means, because I think a lot of people can misunderstand what you mean when you're saying just be. So, you know, because it's like, well, how can I help to not be who I am? You know, who am I? You know, I'm being who I'm being.
Okay. So it's almost so simple that it seems complex. But to be is to just simply exist. Being saying, well, who am I? Who would I be in this world? Who am I? Well, you're you. So stop trying to figure it out, because you're perfect just the way you are. The things that are happening to us, all the experiences, that's not who we are. That's just part of the human experience. Who we are is intrinsic. It's true to the souls inside of our bodies, the spirits inside of our God pods, whatever you want to call it. It is separate from the vessels that we are, you know, these skin suits that we're walking around in. It is separate from the thoughts that come to us. We are, well, we just are. We are. There is no label to put on it.
Right.
Those of us, when we're seeking to put a label, like, well, how do I be?
Right.
That's the ego asking, because the ego strives for and wants to identify and label everything.
Right.
Watching a child is one of the easiest ways to invite being. Seeing how they just simply float around this place without a care in the world, that's being. They're just existing. They're moving around in their God pods. They're exploring. They're experiencing. That's being.
Yeah.
So, of course, we have to balance our responsibilities, but there are still moments that we can be, and it's as simple as kind of separating from. If we're able to acknowledge that we are kind of like this, let's say we're like in a tank, right? And we're like just riding around in this tank, and that's our body, okay? That's our vessel. We're riding around in this tank, and we're experiencing life around us in this tank. As long as we realize we're driving inside of it and it's not who we are, that's being.
Right.
We're experiencing the human experience while but acknowledging that we're still we're internally inside, we're quizzical, we're looking around, we're, you know, inquisitive. Does that help at all? I don't know if it's so simply it's so simple that it's profound because we've gotten so far away from not identifying everything.
Right.
People could hear me talking and they might be labeling and identifying with, you know, okay, well, this chick's nuts. And, you know, oh, I think she's on to something. She must be really well educated in da-da-da-da-da. Well, no. We all have this information.
Right.
We all have these powers, these intuitions. It's just tapping into it. And
Right.
the only way we can tap into it is to kind of fade out of the human experience just long enough that we can acknowledge that we're on the outside looking in.
Right.
If we can just view ourselves as separate from our bodies and our thoughts, that's being.
Yeah. It sounds a lot to me too like just being accepting of the moment. I think, you know, a lot of times it's like, oh my God, this happened and I want it to be different. I want something to be different. I want something to be different, and you just keep going over about how you want something to be different, how you want something, you know.
Totally.
And
just deal with it.
Just it is what it is. That's there, but there's also a choice, and when we can stop focusing on what you're not liking, all of a sudden it's like
Totally.
you start to be aware of all the things that you can be grateful for, all the things that you are
Right.
excited about in life, and I think that's a key in what you're talking about, and in being in the present moment, and in you know, just being who you are. You
Right.
know? Yeah.
And then you're not irritated as much either because you're simply being. You're
Yeah.
not being frustrated. You're not being better than the environment. You're not being, you know, not good enough. You're just being. So it's almost like watching this comical, you know, play take place in front of you.
Right. 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 And laughing and to me it's breakthrough. Now, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, we're talking a lot about ego in my classes at the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts, and even the motto on the wall says to be an instrument, not an ego, in the healing of others.
Right.
And you know, honestly, the first time this even came about, I guess this idea was when I was listening to the audio of Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth,
Mm-hmm.
where he talks about how the ego is what separates us. And I'm sorry, 1 second. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm back. I've got like a little mini ego asking me for guidance.
Oh, nice.
So basically, I'm sorry, just 1 second. Okay. Okay, so Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, he talks about how the ego is what separates us from one another, and that we just really need to learn how to distance ourselves from it, because when we do, we create that inner peace, that awareness. Well, I was aware as I was listening to it that it was very powerful, it was profound, it was heavy work. And so I had to find a way to loosen it up. And I'm big on metaphors. So one night in class, I just had mentioned to a classmate that egos were like farts. And then the puns just started rolling. The comparisons started working. And I don't know, after that, you know, that's all she wrote. Literally, it came to fruition, and it was into physical manifestation. And you know, even now, I still have folks come up to me and they're like, hey, I got another chapter for you, you know, like, hey, make sure you put in one about sharks, and make sure, you know.
Yeah, right.
So it's real comical that there's all these appropriate comparisons, and yeah, so that was the inspiration, I guess, to make it a little bit easier to digest, you know, pun intended.
Digest, right. Cool. So what does that mean to you, to be an instrument in the healing of others and not an ego?
Well, I think anytime we're lending help to other folks, especially in therapeutic forms, different therapies, I think that we sometimes feel like we're superior to others, or perhaps we insert our own ego, because we talked about how the ego in us identifies with the ego in others. I think that oftentimes we attach ourselves to what we believe, we perceive to be truth. And when we do that, we try to tell people how to maybe fix their human experience. The ego likes to label, it likes to identify. So it's not up to us as instruments of healing. It's not up to us to make any conclusions based on our perceptions, because our perceptions are just our egos trying to identify and label, but we might be mistaken. We might not understand everything in its entirety. Someone could come to you with maybe issues with their parents, and because you have perhaps written off your parents based on your circumstances, and a client comes to you about what appears to be similar, you might start to use your ego to kind of guide irresponsibly and unethically, but maybe not intentionally, but without knowing, you let your ego kind of drive and guide where this client needs to go. So it's really important that we just be absent of ego when we're spending this time with our clients, if you will, or just our fellow beings, if we're not going to label it. We just need to be with one another, hear them out, and trust that they themselves have the answers within them, because we all do. We all have our own answers within us.
Right.
So that's what it means to be an instrument, not an ego. You're simply holding space. You're just there with them, respecting their human experience in this moment, this time and space where they're owning their own stuff and they're figuring it out themselves.
Right.
And not to interject as an ego at all.
Yeah.
So that's what it means to me, and then to others it might mean something else. But to me, that's what I perceive it to mean.
Wow. Thank you. Now, give us a few examples of egos and what they could possibly, how they could affect us. We just talked about parents and then things of that nature, but some comical kind of egos that tend to trip people up, and people think they can't let those kinds of things go.
Sure. Okay. So somewhat like a silent but deadly fart. This would be the internal dialogue. Our ego's constantly telling us where to go, how to get there, where we should have turned, who we're better than, who we're not good enough for. That's internal dialogue. But that's, whether it's being voiced or not, that ego is still internally inside and it's festering. So that's much like silent but deadly farts, right?
Yeah.
Then you've also got, we'll say, the hot air, which is chapter 7. I talk about how oftentimes our egos, it's just our perception, and we're making it based on things that we are familiar with labeling and identifying. So oftentimes our egos might latch on to someone else's story or someone else's attitudes, and we make our own perceptions based on what we understand to be true. And what if it's just hot air? What if everything that our ego is telling us is inaccurate?
Right.
So a lot like farts, sometimes it's just hot air. So then and then another example would be shards. Oh, just in the basket, please, buddy. I'm on the phone, okay? Sorry. little life, little human beings that are, it's the end of the world because we can't find the laundry basket. Okay, so, the third and another chapter I'll talk about too is the shards. So this is the idea of, when we have diarrhea, right? Diarrhea of the mouth. Basically, this is when we think we have our egos under control, and then all of a sudden we just expel, almost like diarrhea of the mouth.
Right.
We're in a certain setting, and we're like, well, we're proud that we're holding back and that we're not going off the deep end with our opinions, and then all of a sudden something just it really, really triggers us a certain way, and then before you know it, we just expel it all.
Right.
And we just let it go.
Let it go.
Diarrhea of the mouth, we say way more than we intended to. Perhaps we offend someone, this information that we really didn't need to share, or we even say something without acknowledging that the person we're talking about is directly behind us,
Yeah.
maybe a boss
Yeah.
or a fellow shipmate or service member, so there's tons of different ways that the ego shows up, but really it's any time we are labeling or identifying anything. And it's not that the ego is good or bad. It's simply part of the human experience. Our egos might be accurate in their perception of someone being a brown noser, but perhaps we can show compassion as to why they are a brown noser. Maybe we can say, wow, that person I identify with, that person always looking for all these projects, trying to be a yes person, and because we all have served with those people, right?
Right.
There's always going to be someone who is that was me. I was the yes person, and I would spread thin, trying to always take on the next task, taking on way more than I could handle, you name it. And basically, I took on way too much, and I'm sure that I had many, many people that had plenty to say about me being a brown noser. But the truth is, if some people were able to help me, I guess, identify with the fact that I was looking for attention, I was looking for appreciation, I was looking for praise.
You're looking for approval outside of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to feel validated. And who doesn't? Especially in the military,
Right.
When everything you do amounts to a piece of paper that tells you you're good enough. So, my opinions, and clearly that's a little bit of my ego, because I realized, separate from that environment, that I'm way more than what I tried to be while I was in,
Right.
But yeah, fortunately for me, I had enough people that would come to me and say, I don't know why you're taking on all these tasks, and you kind of come across like a brown noser. You suck up to so-and-so all the time and you're not authentic. You're not being yourself. Just be yourself. And I thought, well, gosh, I can't. I can't be goofy. I got to always be this super militant, da-da-da. And I've got to always save face and be there early and leave late, and at the expense of my family and all these other things. So I guess, I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but this is reflection for me also. I'm realizing that for the people that lent me that compassion, now I can actually lend that to others, and I can say, okay, you know what? If I see someone that's constantly trying to maybe raise their hand in class, and they're constantly trying to interject that they know something, and this happens often in class, and I find myself irritated. The truth is, what irritates me about it is maybe the areas I'm still working on, or the areas that I recognize from previous where I was in that situation, where I was constantly looking for approval.
Right.
And if I can be absent of my ego, if I can hear my ego doing that, and I can lend them the ability, hold that space for them to be in it and to be learning that themselves, or just acknowledge that that's where they're at in their human experience, they're dealing with it.
Yeah.
If I can lend them that, then I'm just simply being, and that's compassion for them, for their egos. So it's wonderful to just simply acknowledge when our egos are present, what it is that they're saying, and how, if at all, we can laugh at it, see and get a little bit of info from it. Because
Right.
Everything's information.
Little feedback.
It's not good or bad. It's just info.
Right. And I think that you hit on something really, really key there. It's not good or bad, because I think what, a judgment against another is oftentimes a judgment against yourself, kind of what you were saying earlier. And
Yeah.
and then it's not good or bad. So if you find yourself, having judgments against someone, or looking at yourself and saying, oh my God, I had diarrhea of the mouth, I silent but deadly, or whatever, it's just information. It's all it is a choice that you've made, and then now you can make another choice.
Well, and that's the victory.
Yeah.
In the moment that you realize it, the ego will try and attach on and say, oh, well, let's have a woe is me party because I can't get this conscious living thing down.
Yeah.
No. Nay. It's the opposite. The very moment that we recognize it, That is grace.
Absolutely.
That is conscious living.
Yes.
That's it. You've made it. You
Yes.
reached it. Ha! Hooray!
Hooray.
You know, you've done it. You've done it. It's that simple.
Wow.
And you do it every single time you practice it. Every single time you even make an attempt to think about, to consciously be aware of your thoughts. Ta-da! Finish line.
Authentic self. Here I am. Yeah. Here I am being. Yeah.
Here I am. And how profound that is.
And how
Here
beautiful.
I am.
Mm-hmm.
Present, I am. I am here. I am present. I am being.
Absolutely.
And that's it.
Love it.
And that's the goal.
Thank you so much, Stevie. On that note, we are going.
Good shit.
We're done with the show, and we're coming to a close. So I want to leave it with that. That was a beautiful, beautiful point, and thank you so much for coming on. Always enjoy having you on here, and thank you for tuning in and listening up, and for sticking with us even through our egoic beginning of of technical difficulties. And so anyway, you're listening to At Ease.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. Can the rocket transcend the bomb bursting in air? Gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land under the frame? Get the height of the yes, we are the brave. We'll fight to rename the name of the brave. We are the U.S. of A. For those unaware, that flag is still there. It's our future to save. Stand of the brave, the U.S. of A.